Peace in our time. Not in the Middle East. No, that's hopeless. But do we have peace within the Republican Party, especially the MAGA base for President Trump? JD Vance may have just brought that peace together. We'll give you the details. Just happened like half an hour ago in a moment. Also, was there interference in the 2020 presidential election? I was told it was the safest, most secure, most legitimate election of our time. Or the FBI covered up a Chinese communist plot to interfere with that election. We're learning now that that may have been the case. We'll give you details in a moment. And Ilhan Omar, of all people, has a remarkable observation about this nation that welcomed her with open arms. She thinks we're becoming the worst country in the world. And the reason? Well, it'll make you mad. So we want to show it to you so we can laugh at her. That's all coming up right now. My name is, and we're brought to you by Birch Gold because we love those guys. My name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry. Just realized I left the picture of my daughter and her wedding up there. I didn't mean to leave it up there. I put it up there for something else. But there, it's my daughter and me. I was about to walk her down the aisle a few months ago, 1 month ago. Just thought I'd point that out. Little insight into my family right there. We are days away from what's been dubbed the Rio Reset. We talked about this, right? This is the greatest threat to the U.S. dollar's global dominance in like 8 decades. On July 6th, the BRICS nations, Russia and China and India and Iran, and, a lot of these countries are not our friends. They're expected to unveil their plans to circumvent the U.S. dollar, possibly cratering its value. Now, they've already been laying the groundwork. Their central banks have been methodically divesting from the U.S. dollar and U.S. bonds in favor of gold. So how can you protect your IRA or 401k from the potential fallout from this meeting? You can diversify with gold from Birch Gold Group. Historically, gold can be a safe haven in times of high uncertainty, which is, well, right about now. Get a free info kit on tax-sheltered gold IRAs by texting the word Larry to 989898. July 6th marks a major meeting among nations that control 1/3 of the world's GDP, and they're coming after your dollar. Arm yourself with information to diversify your retirement savings. Text Larry to the number 989898. Claim your free info kit from Birch Gold. A lot of people say they want to help the show. Of course, liking, subscribing, sharing our links, all that stuff is huge. But text your name to 989898. That would really help our show and help out people who have been there side by side with us for so many months now. Birch Gold, do that, and it's going to be good for you as well. All right, let's get right to it. As you know, President Trump left the G7 meetings in Canada yesterday abruptly, preemptively, because he needed to get back to Washington, D.C. and assemble his National Security Council, which I believe amounts to Marco Rubio and a Chromebook at this point. I kid. But he does wear a lot of hats there in the national security apparatus. The meeting has to do with potential American involvement, or at the very least, approval and support of the next wave of strikes against Iran's nuclear program. President Trump even tweeted out that the people of Tehran should evacuate. And boy, oh boy, did that cause a bit of a freeway jam in the expressways of Tehran. On Air Force One, heading back to Washington, D.C., Trump engaged with reporters on a couple of issues here, and we're going to unpack them. Here we go.
Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We don't have to go too deep into it. They just can't have a nuclear weapon.
What specifically is better than a ceasefire? What are you looking for here?
And then a real end, not a ceasefire. And then
so something that would be permanent.
Yeah, or giving up entirely. Is that okay too?
Are you close to, or is that possible in like 24 White House?
Certainly possible. The complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
So you've always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified at March that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to having it.
Were you open to negotiating with the Iranians right now, or do you want to wait?
I don't know. I've been negotiating. I told them to do the deal. They should have done the deal. Their cities have been blown to pieces, lost a lot of people. They should have done the deal. I told them, do the deal. So I don't know. I'm not too much in a mood to negotiate.
All right, we're going to unpack this again, but let's start with that last part because it was very real. I mean, they got the transparency of this president and just the very real interaction that he has with the media. The fact that the media doesn't like this guy is just, I still won't get over it. The fact that he goes back and just sort of off the cuff has these conversations on the record and is able to just talk like a real human being. And especially that last part, incredibly real, incredibly relatable. Yeah, no, I'm not in the mood to negotiate anymore. They had their chance. They should have taken the deal, and time to watch the chips fall where they may. And let's face it, we've been dealing with Iran for, about 5 decades now. I mean, they've been a terrorist state from literally their first day as a government, the Islamic Republic of Iran, that is, when they deposed the Shah, who sought refuge here in the United States of America. And then they took our hostages and seized our embassy. And it's kind of been downhill from there with these guys. We're the great Satan. They want to remove us from the planet, and they want to remove our allies from the planet. When we had the incursion into Iraq and deposed Saddam and his Ba'ath regime, it was the Iranians who filled that void and that vacuum in that country and ended up killing American soldiers and American Marines for years. They want to kill us. And if they have a nuclear weapon, it's lights out, literally. So let's break this down a little bit because there were a lot of choice moments here in the president's impromptu press conference.
Remember, Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple. We don't have to go too deep into it. They just can't have a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, it is very simple. And in fact, the president's rapid response team put out a montage. It's about 4 minutes long. We could show it to you. But it shows every instance as president and as candidate in 2024 when he repeated the exact same thing over and over and over and over again. Anybody who's saying that Trump is in some way betraying his America First policies by insisting that come hell or high water, Iran is prohibited from having a nuclear weapon, well, you're just either being purposefully obtuse or obfuscating, or you're not paying attention. This has been a pretty simple, clear, and consistent message from President Trump and candidate Trump. Iran can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, period. And that's no different, by the way, from every Republican or every American president's policies for 5 decades. Anybody who wants norms and they want consistency in their presidents, you should be happy that this president is no different than the past several presidents with that simple message and that simple goal. Of course, the devil's in the details on how you actually make sure that is make sure that we make that happen, that Iran never has a nuclear weapon. And well, the rubber's sort of hitting the road right now. This is where the decision-making process has to actually go forward. And what that decision is, well, that's what we're in the midst of debating. All right, a little bit more from the president last night.
Specifically is better than a ceasefire. What are you looking for here?
And then a real end, not a ceasefire. And then
So something that would be permanent.
or giving up entirely.
Is
That's
that
okay too.
Are you closer? Is that possible in the next 24?
Why not? Certainly possible. The complete give up. That's possible, yeah.
I do love that too. Why not? It's possible. He's always sort of been an optimistic guy, especially when it comes to negotiation. It is the art of the possible. That's the art of the deal. But let's just read between the lines here. What do you want more than permanent? What do you want more than a ceasefire? And he said an end, a permanent end. Does that mean an end to the regime? Not necessarily. What he was saying is an end to the program, to the attempts to obtain a nuclear weapon. But of course, can you trust this regime if they say, okay, we're not going to try to get a nuclear weapon anymore. We're not going to try to enrich uranium. We're not going to try to do anything like that. Why? Why would you believe them if they just say that, right? There's no reason to believe them. So then you get into the trust but verify thing. But we already know that Iran has violated their agreements for non-proliferation. We're going to get into that in just a moment. So what does an end really look like? An end of this regime? Well, they're not going to voluntarily step down and say, okay, we don't want to, bring in a new caliphate and we don't want to be an Islamic regime anymore. And you know what? We Shiites, we had it all wrong. It was really the Sunnis that were correct. So we'll just step down and we'll no, the Ayatollahs aren't going to do that. Okay. These are zealots. They actually do believe what they believe. And they think that they're going to bring on the new caliphate and take over the world. I mean, When your enemy tells you what they want to do, you should probably pay attention to them. And yes, Iran is our enemy. No headline there and nothing new there. So what does an end mean exactly? As long as they are the Islamic Republic of Iran with the government set up and the totalitarian theocracy that they have right now through the Ayatollahs, nothing's really going to change. And so then the question is, how do you end it? If that's what President Trump is looking for, how does that happen? And who's there to build up what the new thing is, right? The whole devil you know situation in this case. I mean, it's quite literal.
You've always said that you don't believe Iran should be able to have a nuclear weapon, but how close do you personally think that they were to getting one? Because Tulsi Gabbard testified at Barch that the intelligence community said Iran wasn't building a nuclear weapon.
I don't care what she said. I think they were very close to happen.
All right, now that exchange is getting a whole lot of attention. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard said under oath in a congressional hearing that it's the IC community's conclusion that they're not close to a nuclear weapon. Trump says, I don't care what she says. I think they were close. This is the clip that's making the rounds right now from Director Gabbard's testimony. Take a look at what she said, or at least part of what she said.
The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program.
All right. Did you follow that? Because the words are very carefully chosen, and she's reading it. And as I just sort of implied, this is only part of what she said, but she's specifically talking about a nuclear weapons program and nuclear weapons. Are they building a nuclear weapon? All right. So put a pin on that thought for a moment as we actually explore the entirety of what she said in this portion of the testimony. And any person out there on social media who's just showing you that short clip that we just showed you, 17 seconds long, and any news agencies, cable broadcast or otherwise, that's only quoting that 17 seconds, they're only telling you part of the story, and you should ask them why they're only telling you part of the story. Here's the rest of what she said. In fact, we'll show you the entire statement in its entirety.
You have that, Larry?
Oh, excuse me. I apologize. Let's do that. Stand by. Bad host. Bad host. I wish I could blame Kevin for that one. All right, here we go.
Cyber operations and capabilities also present a serious threat to U.S. networks and data. The IC continues to assess that Iran is not building a nuclear weapon, and Supreme Leader Khamenei has not authorized the nuclear weapons program that he suspended in 2003. The IC continues to monitor closely if Tehran decides to reauthorize its nuclear weapons program. In the past year, we've seen an erosion of a decades-long taboo in Iran on discussing nuclear weapons in public, likely emboldening nuclear weapons advocates within Iran's decision-making apparatus. Iran's enriched uranium stockpile is at its highest levels and is unprecedented for a state without nuclear weapons.
Why do they keep cutting out that last part? All right, so a weapons program and building a weapon. She first said that they're not building a weapon and they don't have a weapons program per se. Do you see how I'm using quotation marks for those of you who are watching the video? But at the same time, they have an unprecedented level of enriched uranium. They keep enriching uranium. They keep enriching uranium at a high, dare I say, weapons level quality. Why? They're sitting on the second largest oil reserves in the world. What are they going green all of a sudden? They want to use nuclear energy? Of course not. That makes no sense. So why do they keep enriching uranium? And if they're just enriching uranium, well, listen, as long as they don't have a nuclear weapons program, then there's no big deal. You just heard her say also that the taboo of speaking openly about a nuclear weapons program or creating nuclear weapons is now gone, so that there's more those who are in favor of nuclear weapons and developing nuclear weapons in the Iranian regime are more emboldened to advocate for that case. Here's what we know they have. We know they have missiles because they keep raining down on Tel Aviv as we speak. We know they have the ability to target those missiles. We know they have the ability to do an intercontinental ballistic missile, and we know they've gotten technology from North Korea to do that. That's all a given. So they're enriching uranium, enriching uranium. They have the industrial ability to make missiles and bombs, obviously. We've seen it. They have the engineering technology to make missiles, even intercontinental ballistic missiles. We've seen it. They're in play right now. So if you've got all this enriched uranium and you've already got a program and an industry to create missiles, how much of a hop, skip, or jump, or even just a skip, is it from taking that enriched uranium and actually applying it into the existing missile technology that you already have? Most experts say it could be months, on the outset, maybe a year. The tough part is the enriched uranium. So Iran can say, hey, we don't have a nuclear weapons program. We're just enriching uranium. Well, enriching uranium is the toughest part and the most important part of a nuclear weapons program. And that's why Director Gabbard pointed that out in her testimony as well. And that's also why it's not included in a lot of the news reports you see. Add to that, just this week, that whatever activity is going on in Iran, it is running counter to the IAEA's oversight of the non-proliferation agreements. They think Iran is cheating. They think Iran is moving closer to a nuclear weapon. And dare I say, Director Gabbard, frankly, said the same thing. They're cherry-picking her statement, in my opinion. That said, all the discussion over whether the United States should participate with Israel's strikes on Iran, whether with direct support for tankers allowing their jets to refuel mid-air, or some of the support that we're already giving them right now by intercepting incoming missiles with some of our counter-defensive activities, or whether we should actually just load up a bunker buster on a bomber and fly it over that, Maverick style, put Tom Cruise in the cockpit and just blow up their mountainside nuclear facility. I mean, all of those things seem to be on the table. And then, of course, who cleans up the pieces, and how do you enforce security on the ground if you topple the regime as a new regime tries to fill that vacuum? These are all the things that I suspect are being discussed right now. And they're things that are actually creating a bit of a rift within certain factions of President Trump's most important supporters, the MAGA America First sort of coalition. Now, let's face it, the coalition that won President Trump the White House in 2024 was an extraordinary one, from the Robert F. Kennedy MAHA types to the strong national security, national defense, traditional Republican conservative types, to fiscal conservatives who want to stop the spending and get rid of the waste and get more of a small government approach to things, to the anti-immigration factions who really wanted to secure the borders, to these guys. These guys. The one on the right is Steve Bannon. He hates the deep state and wants it eliminated. And the deep state, in his opinion, is very much connected to the military-industrial complex. And, of course, the guy on the left would be Tucker Carlson, who has a very independent streak and would like the United States government to end most of its foreign interventions, especially military interventions. I think I'm paraphrasing both gentlemen correctly. I can also tell you that I know both of these guys, only worked with one of them in the past, but I know them well. And I can tell you that up until this moment, I never thought I'd see what you're seeing on the screen right now. Because in my personal interactions, which understandably for the gentleman on the right ended about 10 years ago, but for the gentleman on the left, I've had an ongoing relationship with him, and we trade text messages once or twice a year. I thought these guys hated each other. And I don't think I'm speaking out of school. These guys are not pals, but they have a common interest now. And taking Tucker Carlson at his word, his interest is that he is concerned about President Trump, his legacy, and the effectiveness of his presidency, as he believes it is getting sidetracked by others within his administration and within the America First movement to focus on foreign interventions rather than focusing here at home. Rather than paraphrase Tucker Carlson, I will let him speak for himself.
I actually really love Trump. I think he's a deeply humane, kind person. And I am saying this because I'm really afraid that my country's going to be further weakened by this. I think we're going to see the end of American empire, obviously. Other nations would like to see that, and this is a perfect way to scuttle the USS America on the shoals of Iran. But it's also going to end, I believe, Trump's presidency and effectively end it. And so that's why I'm saying this.
What do you mean by that? That's coming from you. That's
you get. Look, I knew Bush. I knew George W. Bush. We had, family connections to Bush. I knew Bush personally. I still see Bush sometimes, and of course, he hates me, and he does because I criticized him on Iraq, and that war is the sum total, from a historical perspective, of his administration. But I knew him, and he had all kinds of plans for the things that he wanted to do. But once domestically, right, to improve the country.
Right.
And you may agree or disagree, but in his mind, he wasn't just about the invasion of Iraq in March of 2000.
Oh, no. He was going to redo Social Security. 100%,
he had
all types of. He was going to take care of the entitlements issue.
And he really thought it was going to work.
Yep.
And you could laugh at that or whatever, but the point is, the second you get enmeshed in a real war, not a fake, let's go bomb the villagers and declare success, though we don't even have a good track record. Why are the Houthis still there?
No,
there's a whole other question,
right,
which is how prepared is the U.S. military for a real conflict? And the answer is totally unprepared. Scary unprepared. I don't think people understand that. But anyway, the only reason I'm saying any of this is because I really, really care.
Okay, I'm presenting it, and I'm going to let you decide, because obviously this has become a divisive issue within the Republican commentariat, within the MAGA America First coalition. And I left out another part of the incredibly strong and diverse coalition that President Trump put together for the 2024 election, and that has to do with influencers and podcasters and thought leaders within the digital media. You've got this comedian podcaster, Kevin Smith, who is now calling for Trump's impeachment. By the way, not for any military incursion to Iran, which, by the way, is not impeachable, but because he apparently knew about and didn't stop Israel from shooting missiles at Iran, which I don't think is a president's job. And again, certainly not impeachable. But suddenly you've got calls for his impeachment. You've got Joe Rogan expressing concerns about this and other factors within the Trump presidency. And I guess what I'm saying is, this was such a remarkable coalition that was put together. There was going to be some sort of breakup at some point. There was going to be some sort of splintering over some issues. And you're seeing it. You're seeing it play out in real time right now. Two gentlemen that have very strong followings and very big, loud voices trying to influence President Trump's decisions. I don't think it's working. President Trump yesterday, before he left the G7, asked specifically about Mr. Carlson.
Tucker Carlson criticizing you, saying that you were complicit in the war.
I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying. Let him go get a television network and say it so that people listen.
And quickly, have you spoken to Zelensky before your bylaws?
Yeah, a lot of them.
Japan?
A lot of them. Could happen.
Could happen?
Let him get a television network, suggesting that now that he's no longer on Fox News, he doesn't have influence. Well, I don't think that's necessarily fact-based. He still has a lot of influence, but he doesn't have influence at 1600 Pennsylvania, I don't think. Neither does Mr. Bannon. I'm not saying that Donald Trump doesn't care what the various thought leaders within these coalitions think, but I don't think it's going to influence his decision, not on something this fundamental. Again, if President Trump drew a red line, which he did, Iran cannot be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. He can't allow that red line to be crossed. It's not like Barack Obama, who did the exact same thing multiple times in the Middle East and handed Donald Trump a complete and total mess, because Obama would draw red lines and then change his mind, shrug, and go off and do the Jimmy Fallon show. That ain't Trump's style. Also, later on in the day, President Trump tweeted out criticism of Tucker Carlson, calling him kooky Tucker. That's what President Trump does. JD Vance, the Vice President of the United States, who, by the way, counts among his staff members in the Trump administration, one of Tucker Carlson's sons, he took to the X social media platform just about 45 minutes ago and put out a statement. JD Vance, I think, pretty in touch with what's going on with regard to all of these factions and all of these disparate voices. Also, pretty seasoned in communicating ideas and being able to transparently allow people to know exactly where things stand and what's going on. One other thing about JD Vance, unlike President Trump, he has an election or two coming up in his future. Donald Trump does not. And so it may be even more important for JD Vance to sort of get a handle on a coalition that he probably expects or at least hopes to inherit. So what did JD Vance say? Could he be the one to sort of bring peace to these warring factions within the MAGA, America First, isolationist, interventionist conflict? Well, let's see what he had to say. JD Vance says, look, I'm seeing this from the inside and am admittedly biased towards our president and my friend, but there's a lot of crazy stuff on social media, so I wanted to address some things directly on the Iran issue. First, President Trump has been amazingly consistent over 10 years that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. Over the last few months, he encouraged his foreign policy team to reach a deal with the Iranians to accomplish this goal. The president has made clear that Iran cannot have uranium enrichment. And he has said repeatedly that this would happen one of two ways, the easy way or the other way. Let me pause here for a minute. This is critically important as you were trying to discern whose side you're on. Because I'm with you guys. I like most of these people. I make no secret about the fact that Steve Bannon and I do not get along personally. But I respect his audience and I respect his influence. I do. And I don't want any of the people who are on my side to be warring with each other because, as Andrew Breitbart used to say, we have a common enemy. It's the leftists trying to tear all of this down and destroy all of this. And I'm with my buddy Andrew. Let's focus on them, not on each other. That said, these things happen sometimes. And I got to keep it real here. Vance is right. Trump has been consistent. He has never wavered from this. And when you hear some of the things that Tucker says about our intervention in the Middle East right now with regard to Iran and their nuclear program and Israel's ability to stop that program, you hear Tucker say things like, who are we to tell Iran that they can't have a nuclear weapon? Okay, that may be your opinion, and that's fine, and I respect you for it. You're a smart guy, way smarter than me. But Trump has never embraced that idea. That would be a huge 180 shift for him. For Trump to say, yeah, I've thought about it, and I know I've said for the last decade that Iran can't be allowed to have a nuclear weapon, but who are we to say? See, that would be the problem. So what you're trying to do is try to find who's sort of shifting, who's sort of pivoted from where they were. And listen, there's nothing wrong with changing your mind. Let me be honest here, and let me be very, very real. Any adult human being in America right now looking at the potential for the American government and the American military to get further entrenched in a conflict in the Middle East, if you are not hitting the pause button, looking in the rearview mirror and saying, hold on, did we learn any lessons from the last 2 decades of our involvement in this area, in this region? Can we learn there and maybe not make the same mistakes? If you can pause and say, how is this different? How is this similar? And if we're going to do something, can we make sure we do it in a way that is improved from the last situation? If you're not doing that, there's something wrong with you, okay? It takes some wisdom. It takes experience. But I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And there's certainly nothing unpatriotic or not America first about that to just say, hey, I don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Let's talk this through transparently so we know exactly what we're getting into and even more importantly, how we get out of it. That's a good thing. But for Trump to immediately pivot and say, yeah, who are we to say whether Iran has a nuclear weapon or not? That would be a shift, a monumental shift. And if people are demanding or compelling him to make that shift, that's not consistent with who he's been as a leader and a candidate, right? All right, so let's go on with JD Vance. All right, second, I've seen a lot of confusion over the issue of civilian nuclear power and uranium enrichment. These are distinct issues. Iran could have civilian nuclear power without enrichment, but Iran rejected that. Meanwhile, they've enriched uranium far above the level necessary for any civilian purpose. They've been found in violation of their non-proliferation obligations by the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA, which is hardly a right-wing organization. True that. It's one thing to want civilian nuclear energy. It's another thing to demand sophisticated enrichment capacity. And it's still another to cling to enrichment while simultaneously violating basic non-proliferation obligations and enriching right to the point of weapons-grade uranium, which is exactly where Iran is right now. And by the way, that fact is not inconsistent with Tulsi Gabbard's testimony from March. So don't believe anybody who's saying, oh, we're getting conflicting messages. No, those are consistent messages. Back to JD Vance. I have yet to see a single good argument for why Iran needed to enrich uranium well above the threshold for civilian use. I've yet to see a single good argument for why Iran was justified in violating its non-proliferation obligations. I've yet to see a single good pushback against the IAEA's findings. Meanwhile, the president has shown remarkable restraint in keeping our military's focus on protecting our troops and protecting our citizens. He may decide he needs to take further action to end Iranian enrichment. That decision ultimately belongs to the president. And of course, people are right to be worried about foreign entanglement after the last 25 years of idiotic foreign policy. But I believe the president has earned some trust on this issue. And having seen this up close and personal, I can assure you that he is only interested in using the American military to accomplish the American people's goals. Whatever he does, that is his focus. It's a remarkable statement from the vice president on social media. And I'd love for your reaction to it, by the way. Whose side are you on right now in this whole thing? Because, listen, this is a conversation that we're having within our own family, those of us who support the president and this administration. And it's not easy. Nothing simple here. But we have to have this conversation, and we have to figure out how we can reach some agreement on the most important parts of this, like Iran shouldn't have a nuclear weapon. I think that's something we can all agree on. And stopping them from getting a nuclear weapon is the epitome of America first, in my opinion. But you tell me. I'm interested if you can let us know in the chat right now or in the comments after the fact. One other aspect of this that I think is worth noting, the whole America first idea. Does America first mean America only? Does America first means that we only engage in foreign policy decisions that benefit the United States of America? Maybe. And if that's the case, does stopping Iran from getting a nuclear weapon benefit the United States of America? I would say yes. Yes, it does. But does America first also mean that we ignore the other countries in the world and we just focus on the problems that we have here at home? Because I assure you, no matter what foreign entanglement, as George Washington warned us of, that we could venture into right now, and we do have a robust foreign policy, foreign involvement, and a robust United States military, the most powerful in the world, whatever venture we engage in, someone can always stand up and say, yeah, but our roads and our schools and our hospitals are nightmares. Shouldn't we fix that first before we go do something overseas? And the answer would always be, well, yeah, you have a point. But is that what America first means to you? Let me know. Meanwhile, our ambassador to Israel sent a text message to President Trump. He's on the ground there as missiles are raining down on that country, as all of these decisions are being made. He's Mike Huckabee. That text message was published by President Trump on his Truth Social account. And so Ambassador Huckabee made it public for everyone to see. Mr. President, God spared you in Butler, Pennsylvania to be the most consequential president in a century, maybe ever. The decisions on your shoulders I would not want to be made by anyone else. You have many voices speaking to you, sir, but there is only one voice that matters, his voice. I am your appointed servant in this land and am available for you, but I do not try to get in your presence often because I trust your instincts. No president in my lifetime has been in a position like yours, not since Truman in 1945. I don't reach out to persuade you, only to encourage you. I believe you will hear from heaven, and that voice is far more important than mine or anyone else's. You sent me to Israel to be your eyes, ears, and voice, and to make sure our flag flies above our embassy. My job is to be the last one to leave. I will not abandon this post. Our flag will not come down. You did not seek this moment. This moment sought you. It's my honor to serve you. Ambassador Mike Huckabee. And so there we are. We're definitely at a pivot point in American history, a fork in the road. Use whatever sort of cliche you want. But the president has the weight of the world on his shoulders. Oh, there's another cliche. And he's got a decision to make. And it would help if those of us who consider ourselves his base, his solid support, if we downshifted a bit, took a deep breath, and allowed the president to make that decision, knowing that we put him in this place to do just that and to trust in how this process plays out. Hey, if you like this show and you like what we do, become a VIP member to Town Hall, if you don't mind. VIP to Town Hall. You go to the website, townhallvip.com, and use my name as a discount code. You get 50% off your membership, and that membership's pretty awesome. You get an ad-free experience on all our sites. That's Town Hall, Hot Air, Red State, PJ Media, Twitchy, and Bearing Arms. Plus, you'll get exclusive content just for VIP members. And most importantly, you help finance our journalistic endeavors. You keep our good investigative journalism going. You keep all the dynamic commentary going. You keep us going. And we'd appreciate that. Go to townhallvip.com. That's townhallvip.com. Use my code Larry to get 50% off. Thanks for that. Yesterday, the director of the FBI, Kash Patel, put out a stunning statement on X, followed by the link to an article that we're going to go through here, but check it out. FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by the CCP, that would be the Chinese Communist Party. I have immediately declassified the material, turned the documents over to the chairman, Grassley, for further review. That would be Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa. He is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the United States Senate. There's the article from Just the News, John Solomon's endeavor. FBI gives Congress intel on alleged Chinese plot to create fake mail-in ballots in 2020. What? I thought the 2020 presidential election was the most secure presidential election of our lifetimes, of American history. We've never had a more secure. There was no, what? That's got to be wrong. Well, let's read the article together, shall we? JustTheNews.com. FBI Director Kash Patel, Monday evening, that'd be last night, turned over to Congress an intelligence report raising concerns that China had mass-produced fake U.S. driver's licenses to carry out a scheme to hijack the 2020 election with fake mail-in ballots for Democrat Joe Biden. Fake mail-in ballots? That's impossible. What? I mean, it's true. Joe Biden did get more votes than any person in history by far, like by 10 million more than Obama had gotten. I do remember that. And I do remember that in 2020, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we had extraordinary new protocols for mail-in ballots. We've never had so many mail-in ballots in our lifetimes in this country. People were using drop boxes for their mail-in ballots. People were encouraged to mail in their ballots because we had these social distancing protocols due to the pandemic where you couldn't stand in line without being 6 feet away from each other. Although, if I remember right, that social distancing protocol, Anthony Fauci said, yeah, I have no idea where that came from. Who came up with 6 feet? Nobody knows. It really didn't make a difference. But somehow on election day, it's the one protocol that triggered these mass mail-in voter efforts. And of course, with mail-in ballots, the verification process for the identity of the person mailing that ballot, it's kind of sketchy. You send in a copy of your driver's license to prove you are who you are. So you have, oh, wait a second, fake driver's license. That would make it even easier to stuff the ballot box with a whole bunch of phony votes, like 10 million phony votes that we've never seen before and we've never seen again. Huh. Crazy, isn't it? By the way, speaking of that pandemic, where did that thing start again? Oh, yeah. China. So let me get this straight. China somehow miraculously comes up with this virus out of their laboratory in February of an election year. It goes global. Our economy gets shut down. People get pissed off. We change all of our voting protocols so that everyone mails them in. And at the same time, China is making fake driver's license for mail-in ballots so people can mail in the ballots and have them get counted because there's no scrutiny on mail-in ballots. Huh. It's quite a hypothesis. Of course, none of that can be true because I've been promised that the 2020 presidential election was the most secure presidential election of our lifetime. Let's get back to the article. The newly declassified intelligence reports from August 2020 weren't corroborated or fully investigated. Huh. So the FBI had this allegation and they didn't investigate it. Instead, the report was recalled from intelligence agencies at about the time then FBI Director Chris Wray testified there were no known plots for foreign interference ahead of the 2020 election in which Biden defeated Donald Trump. Well, Biden defeated Donald Trump based on the rules and protocols that were in place at that moment in 2020. So let me get this straight. The FBI had this intelligence. They had a report. It was a whistleblower, an informant told them, yeah, China's doing this. And then the FBI recalled the report from intelligence agencies. In other words, hey, send that back. This hasn't been fully vetted. We're not going to count this. And then right as the report gets recalled, Christopher Wray goes to Capitol Hill. He's asked, is there any evidence of foreign intervention in our election? And he can say, nope, I've got no evidence because the report had just been recalled. That's convenient. I'm sure it's just a coincidence. More in the article. New documents were turned over to Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, who had first raised concerns to the Bureau that the intelligence hadn't been fully vetted and instead was just dismissed, even though there was evidence of the fake licenses. Yeah, Grassley knew about this report and then it disappeared. And every time he would ask about it, there was like, yeah, we don't have anything about that. Thanks to the oversight work and partnership of Chairman Grassley, the FBI continues to provide unprecedented transparency to the People's Bureau. Patel told Just the News in a statement. To that end, we've located documents Chairman Grassley requested, which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election. That's how Kash Patel characterized these alarming allegations. Specifically, these include allegations of plans from the CCP to manufacture fake driver's license and ship them into the United States for the purpose of facilitating fraudulent mail-in ballots, allegations which, while substantiated, were abruptly recalled and never disclosed to the public. In accordance with Chairman Grassley's request for documents, I have immediately declassified the material and turned the document over to the chairman for further review. But hold on a minute. I mean, if this is just one standalone whistleblower or informant who says, hey, that China's doing this, and then there's no other evidence, there's nothing else to support. I mean, that's just, you can't do a full-blown FBI investigation on something like that. You can't claim that there's interference in the 2020 election just based on that. There's no other evidence, is there? Is there? Let's go back to the report. Officials who've seen the documents told Just the News the FBI had a relatively new confidential source who provided information in summer 2020 that the Chinese government was manufacturing and exporting fake U.S. driver's license as part of a plot to create voter identities for Chinese residents living in the United States so they could vote with mail-in ballots. You know how they're really insistent to make sure that there are Chinese students here and Chinese residents here? That's really an important thing for them. Wonder why. The intelligence sources claim the plot was specifically designed to benefit Biden. They also said the intelligence report was recalled within a few weeks and the allegations never fully investigated on the grounds that the source needed to be re-interviewed. Yeah, we better re-interview that guy. But here's the kicker. Another agency, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, had intercepted nearly 20,000 fake driver's licenses around the time the intelligence came in a possible corroboration of the report. So they had a whistleblower. They had an informant. He said that China's doing this. They're making fake driver's license. They're bringing them into the country. They're going to utilize them with fake identities so that they can put ballots in the mail and vote when people aren't supposed to vote and stuff the ballot box. Oldest trick in the book, right? And of course, validation of a mail-in ballot. You remember the chaos in states where they were like trying to validate all of these mail-in ballots and they were counting and it took days and days and days. It's not a meticulous process. They look at the ballot, they look at the name, they look at the driver, and it looks good to me. Move on. Count that one. That's another one for Biden. Go ahead. Count that one. It's another one for Biden. They're not going to be able to tell if the driver's license is fake or not. So at the same time, they're getting an allegation that that is happening. Customs and Border Protection intercepts a shipment of 20,000 fake driver's licenses. Why would 20,000 fake driver's licenses be shipped into America on an election year? Christopher Wray, the head of FBI, and whatever numbnuts was in charge of various oversight, they just looked the other way. Said, nah, I don't see anything. Nothing to see here. Speaking of Christopher Wray, this was his testimony, the testimony in question. Under oath, in front of Congress, it's during the pandemic. See the face mask in the background? Do you have any evidence of a foreign plot to interfere with the election?
The intelligence community's consensus is that Russia continues to try to influence our elections, primarily through what we would call malign foreign influence, as opposed to what we saw in 2016, where there was also an effort to target election infrastructure, cyber targeting. We have not seen that second part yet this year or this cycle. But we certainly have seen very active efforts by the Russians to influence our election in 2020 through what I would call more the malign foreign influence side of things. Social media, use of proxies, state media, online journals, et cetera, and discord. And I think the intelligence community has assessed this publicly, primarily to denigrate Vice President Biden and what the Russians see as kind of an anti-Russian establishment. That's essentially what we're seeing in 2020.
There you go. You bet we have foreign intervention going on our elections. It's all Russia, 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 and they're trying to hurt Biden. Meanwhile, this guy knew of this report and specifically recalled it and sent it back for further investigation. So we're told, so that he could, I guess, truthfully answer under oath that, nah, we don't know anything about any foreign interference in the election. Just this thing with Russia to help Trump. Oh, by the way, who was the person who made the decision to not pursue that investigation? Well, apparently, this guy, Timothy Thibault, he's the one who shut down the Hunter Biden investigation, too, saying that the laptop was Russian disinformation, and he was the one who was in charge of all allegations of investigating election fraud in 2020. Good to know. If you look at contemporary stories at the time of the 2020 presidential election, here's a perfect example from NBC News. Russia tried to help Trump in 2020. Iran tried to hurt him, and China stayed out of it, according to a new report. That's in 2019. And that's the extent of the story you'll get. Am I being controversial when I say I don't think we've been told the whole truth about the 2020 presidential election? Am I being controversial when I say that a plot as described exactly as Kash Patel in these documents put forth to the Senate Intelligence Committee, that kind of plot would be exactly the kind of plot that could sway that presidential election? Remember, we're only talking about 5,000 to 10,000 votes in Pennsylvania, Georgia, Wisconsin, and Arizona, and you don't need all 4 of those states either. Did I mention that we had unprecedented upending of typical election fraud protocols because of the COVID-19 pandemic? Did I mention the COVID-19 pandemic also originated in China? And did I mention that getting fake driver's license would be a very easy way to circumvent basic fraud protocols due to mail-in ballots? I think I mentioned all that. Maybe, just maybe, we should have a full-blown investigation into what happened in 2020. I mean, I know I'm talking crazy here. The great thing is that if I had mentioned that during the Biden presidency, like 3 years ago, this video would be deleted. I would call that election interference too. Ooh, speaking of the 2024 presidential election, I know we weren't. We were talking about the 2021. But my book, Shameless Liars, actually details a hell of a lot of the crap that happened during the Biden presidency and the censorship regime over COVID-19, as well as the cover-up of his health concerns and all the other lies that the media told about Biden, about Kamala. Look at the glare from my lights, and about Donald Trump. But the good news is it has a really happy ending because Trump won at the end, and so did you. Check out my book. It's a good one. You'll love it. Buy it on Amazon today. Da, da, da. Let's turn to the deportation regime of the Trump presidency. He ran on the idea of mass deportations. He always said that he would start with the criminals first. But ultimately, if you're in this country illegally, you should get out. Self-deport. In fact, they put together a great plan for you to leave. If you don't, you'll be deported. And we're seeing that play out right now. But earlier this week, or a few days ago, I should say, the president did make an announcement that surprised a lot of people. It had to do with a certain sector of illegal immigrants in this country with certain jobs. Take a look. He put this on social media. It said, our great farmers and people in the hotel and leisure business have been stating that our very aggressive policy on immigration is taking very good long-time workers away from them, with those jobs being almost impossible to replace. In many cases, the criminals allowed into our country by the very stupid Biden open borders policy are applying for those jobs. This is not good. We must protect our farmers, but get the criminals out of the USA. Changes are coming. So the signal that was sent was that the hotel leisure industry and the agriculture industry was going to get a pass right now on any sort of raids and deportations. And a lot of people are like, well, what are you doing? If people are breaking the law, they're breaking the law. And if these businesses, by the way, are employing illegal immigrants to exploit their cheap labor, well, those businesses should be punished. You're not allowed to hire somebody if they don't have documentation. And if they're providing you with fake documentation, well, then when you fill out your I-9 and they're engaging in identity theft, well, that's a crime too. It's another reason why people should be deported, and this should end right now. And when I say some people, I mean me and a lot of other people observing this whole thing. Somebody got in Trump's ear and said, listen, you're going to devastate the agriculture industries. You're going to do this. You're going to do that, which is the same stuff we've been hearing from the left all the time. Who's going to pick your strawberries? We like our cheap labor. We like exploiting people. They're Democrats. That's what they do. All right. So that caused a lot of confusion, and people were not quite sure exactly why President Trump made that decision and made that announcement. And before you get too concerned about it, as of this morning, he reversed that policy. Washington Post wrote it up and said Trump officials reverse guidance exempting farms, hotels, and immigration raids. ICE agents had been told to continue conducting enforcement operations at agricultural businesses despite concerns about negative effects on the food industry. By the way, what does that mean, that it's impossible to replace these jobs? And by the way, one other thing, the agriculture industry has a guest farm worker visa exemption. It's been in existence since the 50s. If big agriculture needs to import cheap labor from other countries to pick fruits and vegetables, you've already got your carve out. The problem is people come in here, they get those jobs that are supposed to be temporary seasonal employment, they overstay. And those farms or big ag industry farms, they take advantage and they exploit those people knowing that they've overstayed their temporary visa. That's the problem. And that undermines our economy and undermines jobs. By the way, this announcement was met with derision and sarcasm and criticism from one Gavin Newsom, a governor who benefits from all this illegal activity. He said, looks like Stephen Miller is the boss after all. Trump got bigfooted by his own staff. Pathetic. I love it how Gavin Newsom tries to be the tough guy and pick fights with Donald Trump. But of course, his argument makes no logical sense if you're observing all the things that we've been hearing from the left over the course of this presidency. As the great Maze Moore on X pointed out, oh, so Trump got bigfooted by a staff member, Stephen Miller. I guess he's not a king. What were all the No Kings rallies about? if Stephen Miller is really the boss. Furthermore, Newsom is so transparent and clumsy and stupid, and he's doing exactly what the left's been trying to do for months now in this presidency, and that's sow division. They think that Trump is a child. They think that he's got a fragile ego. They think he's a narcissist. They think he's a megalomaniac. They tried to divide him and Elon Musk. I mean, Elon sort of blew that up on his own, but they tried to like, oh, Trump's not the president. Elon Musk is, right? Remember all of that? And yet we're having a No Kings rally. Right now, oh, Stephen Miller is really in charge. It's like they do this all the time, and they try to create these divisions, and now they're trying to divide Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, and it doesn't work, but they'll keep doing it anyway. The fact of the matter is, our federal law enforcement officers charged with enforcing our immigration and customs laws are doing a great job. They're finding a lot of really bad people. They're apprehending them against all odds and without the help of local law enforcement in certain blue cities across this country. They're still doing an effective job. They're still apprehending bad guys. Here's a report out this week from John Lott at the Crime Statistics Center, I think is what it's called. John Lott, great researcher. And he shows that our murder rate in the United States of America is about to hit its lowest number in almost 20 years. Why could that be? Well, first of all, there's a renewed emphasis on law and order in general and allowing law enforcement to enforce the law, number one. Number two, these ICE raids are getting rid of murderers. But also, if you're a criminal in this country illegally, you're probably keeping your head down right now. You're probably not feeling super emboldened right now. So you're not engaging in the kind of hardcore criminal activity that might lead to murder because you don't want to be on anybody's radar lest you get deported back to your hole of a country. All of these things factored together is giving us the lowest murder rate in America in close to 2 decades. It's phenomenal. The fact of the matter is things slowly but surely are already getting reset in this country because all it took was a new president, a new attorney general, a new FBI director, and a new approach to actually enforcing our laws. And if you're against that, you're against law and order, you're against Western civilization, and you're against American ideals of truth and justice. In other words, you're Ilhan Omar. I can't even describe what you're about to hear from this woman. This ungrateful, despicable, America-hating woman who calls herself a congresswoman. But I'll just let you hear it unfold before your very ears.
To be coming out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy, a beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where the military are in our streets without any regard for people's constitutional rights, while our president is spending millions of dollars propping himself up like a failed dictator with a military parade. It is really shocking, and it should be a wake-up call for all Americans to say this is not the country we were born in. This is not the country we believe in. This is not the country our founding fathers imagined. And this is not the country that is supported by our Constitution, our ideals, our values. And we should all collectively be out in the streets rejecting what is taking place this week.
All right. Quick observation. I assure you our founders did never envision a woman with a foreign accent wearing a turban, calling herself a congressperson, lecturing us about what's American and what's not. You're right there. They never envisioned that. Did she just say this is not the country we were born in? No, this is not the country you were born in. I do love foreign-born individuals who, yes, admittedly now are U.S. citizens, but immediately start lecturing me about what it is to be American. What makes America America. the lack of humility and grace and gratitude from this woman. But I do want to just review one thing in case you missed it.
Be coming out of our country. I mean, I grew up in a dictatorship. And I don't even remember ever witnessing anything like that. To have a democracy.
Have a democracy. Anyway, that's not what I wanted to point out, but it just, fingernails on the chalkboard.
A beacon of hope for the world to now be turned into one of the worst countries where
we're one of the worst countries, says Ilhan Omar. We're one of the worst countries. America is one of the worst countries. That's what Ilhan Omar said. We're one of the worst countries. She speaks for the Democrats. Democrats will not chide her. Democrats will not criticize her. Democrats will invite her to participate in a fundraiser because she raises money, because the base of the Democrat Party agree with her. We're becoming one of the worst countries, she says. She, of course, is from Somalia. So this refugee immigrant who was welcomed here with open arms by this United States of America, she is now calling America one of the worst countries. We should probably check in on Somalia. How are things looking in Somalia? America is one of the worst countries, says Ilhan Omar. Somalia, on the other hand, well, I will admit this. There are no uniformed soldiers on the streets. There are no streets either. For all I know, that could be a uniform. Is that a uniform? No, that's donated clothes from American Christian charities, probably. There are similarities to certain parts of Los Angeles, actually. And I'm sure the smell is the same too. But, that's not fair. She was making a point about the military, right? So what's going on with the Somalian military? I'll just pull a random headline from the last couple of days. 4 African Union soldiers killed in Somalia near Mogadishu. At least 4 African Union soldiers from Uganda were killed and 5 others wounded in an ambush attack in Lower Shabelle region. The attack carried out by al-Shabaab militants took place near Afgoye town, about 30 kilometers southwest of the capital. But America is becoming one of the worst countries compared to Somalia, says Ilhan Omar. Well, if you think that kind of rhetoric and that kind of criticism and that kind of hyperbole and the kind of mess created by Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass in Los Angeles is in some way going to make President Trump rethink or tone down his approach to the mass deportations that he literally promised during the presidential election, you would be wrong. Yesterday, he put out this encyclopedia-sized post on Truth Social. Let's go through it together, shall we? Our nation's ICE officers have shown incredible strength, determination, and courage as they facilitate a very important mission, the largest mass deportation operation of illegal aliens in history. That is literally what he said at his rallies. That is literally what he said on the campaign trail. It's literally what was on his website. It was literally what was in every flyer printed by the campaign. It is literally what he promised during the debates. And it is literally what he said during his acceptance speech and victory speech when he won the election, when he won every single swing state up for grabs. You may not like it, but when people say, did you vote for this? Literally, yes. This is exactly what people voted for because this is exactly what he promised. And if you're angry about mass deportations, be angry at Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Alejandro Mayorkas, who completely f***ed this country with a wide open border. First time it's ever happened in modern American history. Even Obama said that he couldn't keep the border open. Even Obama acknowledged that he had to deport people. All right. Back to the president. Every day, the brave men and women of ICE are subjected to violence, harassment, and even threats from radical Democrat politicians, but nothing will stop us from executing our mission and fulfilling our mandate to the American people. ICE officers are herewith ordered by notice of this truth to do all in their power to achieve the very important goal of delivering the single largest mass deportation program in history. In order to achieve this, we must expand our efforts to detain and deport illegal aliens in America's largest cities, such as Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, where millions upon millions of illegal aliens reside. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. I'll pause there. Let me be clear on a part of the cheating factor that Democrats utilize illegal aliens for that gets overlooked way too often. But it needs to be emphasized here. We have a thing in America called the census. We do census, generally speaking, every 10 to 20 years. It's in the Constitution. You have to do a census. Why do you do a census? Because it helps determine the population of the country. It helps determine the population of each state, and it also helps determine the populations per congressional district. If the population of one state is bigger than it was 10 years ago, then you change the congressional apportionment, because congressional districts are based on population, right? And the most populous state, California, has the most congressional districts, and the smallest populated states like Wyoming and Montana, they just have one congressional district for the whole state. If you have more people, it means you have more congressional districts, right? Right. And those congressional districts, well, that allows you to have more members of the House of Representatives representing your state in the House of Representatives in Congress. Also, don't forget that the Electoral College that determines who's the president of the United States, that's based on each state's congressional districts too. So in other words, if California, for instance, has 50 congressional districts, they get 52 votes in the Electoral College because your 2 senators get a vote as well. That's how we determine how many votes each state has in the Electoral College. So if your state has a ton of congressional districts, it means you have more influence in the presidential election at the Electoral College. Now, in recent years, people have been leaving states like New York and Illinois and California and moving to states like Texas and Tennessee and Florida. They're moving from blue states and they're moving to red states. That means, simple math, those red states are going to have more influence in the presidential election next time around. But here's the rub. During the last 4 years, as you know, we had open borders, and we had 20 million people, it's estimated, come into this country illegally. And unlike years past, did you notice a change? Did you notice how the Biden administration was deliberately flying people from the border to places like New York and Chicago or Los Angeles or San Francisco? Did you notice that? Or Maryland, for that matter, or Virginia in the D.C. area? Oh, yeah. They were flying them in, they were busing them in, they were transporting them in all around the country. Now, ostensibly, this was because these illegal immigrants claimed that they had family members in those areas. Could be true, could not be true. We're not sure. But a whole lot of those people did not stay in those red states of Florida or Texas or Louisiana. They went into blue states. Why? What would be the point, right? Why would they do that? Well, because if the population was fleeing those states because of the horrific policies of the Democrat governors and going to red states, they were losing their clout in the Electoral College and in the House of Representatives. They were losing congressional districts. Now that you've got all those illegal immigrants in those blue cities and in those blue states, you keep your congressional districts. Wait, what? You're probably thinking to yourself, no, Larry, you got that wrong, because they're just illegal immigrants that have moved there. They're not U.S. citizens, and you only count U.S. citizens for congressional districts of the Electoral College. That's not true. Wish it were, should be. But sadly, our founders weren't actually that specific in the Constitution when they figured out how we would determine congressional districts. They just used the word persons, not citizens, persons. So as new people move into those states, they are counted, regardless of their immigration status, whether they are citizens, whether they are legal immigrants with green cards, or whether they are illegal immigrants. If they live there, they are counted. Suddenly, these blue states, they have a rejuvenation of humanity in their cities, in New York, in Chicago, in Los Angeles. And the next thing you know, they're going to have to get more congressional districts. And the next thing you know, their electoral college clout is retained. Now, I'm not saying Democrats have done this on purpose and that it's a grand conspiracy and it's a big plan and they did this knowing exactly what was going to happen all along. No. I'm not saying they're that smart or maniacal, and I'm not saying this is a great replacement theory or anything crazy racist like that, because you're racist if you think things like that, I'm told. No. I'm just saying, hey, it's just, stuff happens and it's incredibly coincidental and certainly benefits all of those same people who are screaming right now about how they demand all of these people are left alone and allowed to stay illegally. It just seems to benefit Karen Bass and Gavin Newsom and their political party to have all those illegal immigrants in their states and in their cities. It certainly benefits them politically in the long run, doesn't it? Add to that, if people do end up voting illegally, well, that certainly goes a long way for them as well. Just a side note, wanted to take you down that path so you had some more information as we discuss this issue. Should we get back to the president? Sure, let's do that. These and other such cities are the core of the Democrat power center, where they use illegal aliens to expand their voter base, cheat in elections, and grow the welfare state, robbing good-paying jobs and benefits from hardworking American citizens. These radical left Democrats are sick of mind, hate our country, and actually want to destroy our inner cities, and they're doing a good job of it. There is something wrong with them. That's why they believe in open borders, transgender for everybody, and men playing in women's sports. And that's why I want ICE, Border Patrol, and our great patriotic law enforcement officers to focus on our crime-ridden and deadly inner cities and those places where sanctuary cities play such a big role. You don't hear about sanctuary cities in our heartland. I want our brave ICE officers to know that real Americans are cheering you on every day. That's true. The American people want our cities, schools, and communities to be safe and free of illegal alien crime, conflict, and chaos. That's why I've directed my entire administration to put every resource possible behind this effort and reverse the tide of mass destruction, migration that has turned once idyllic towns into scenes of third world dystopia. Our federal government will continue to be focused on the re-migration of aliens to the places from where they came and preventing the admission of anyone who undermines the domestic tranquility of the United States. To ICE, FBI, DEA, ATF, the Patriots at Pentagon, and the State Department, you have my unwavering support. Now go get the job done. Signed, DJT. So, Trump is doubling down on the mass deportation protocols and demanding that it be expanded to Chicago, New York, and other high populous blue cities that have been providing sanctuary policies to keep illegal immigrants. And it is mostly in blue cities in blue states. We have blue cities in other states, but you notice it doesn't happen in Dallas or in Houston or in some of these other states that end up voting Republican. Why? Because, well, they don't want a bunch of illegal immigrants there necessarily, because that helps those states with regard to the Electoral College. Keep in mind that these congressional districts are a big part of this. Gavin Newsom, no surprise, didn't like the president's statement that I just read to you. He said his plan is clear: incite violence and chaos in blue states, have an excuse to militarize our cities, demonize his opponents, keep breaking the law, and consolidate power. It's illegal, and we will not let it stand. Think about that for a minute. Gavin Newsom is saying that literally enforcing our laws, our current federal immigration laws, is illegal. Gavin Newsom and the state of California are not allowed to have their own immigration laws. They've got to follow our laws. That's just the way it goes when it comes to border security and immigration. But think about it for a minute. He wants to incite violence and chaos in blue states because the president is enforcing the law that incites violence. He's encouraging that. He's rooting it on. He's hoping for it. If Gavin Newsom was concerned about violence, then he would be working with the federal government to actually get this job done in a more sane, rational, nonviolent, orderly way, but he doesn't. In fact, he creates barriers for order. He creates barriers for nonviolent deportation. He's standing and locking arms with the violent mobs on the streets, resisting law enforcement from enforcing our very laws. That's Gavin Newsom. Meanwhile, a real upside of the president's robust policies over the course of the last 5 months since he took office. Check out this from the New York Post. Nearly 1 million illegal immigrants have self-deported. That leads to higher wages, by the way, as well. Don't forget, the more people who leave the country who are currently undermining wages and employment opportunities in America by being exploited for low-wage work, well, that means that the people who are here getting the jobs legally can demand higher wages because they're not in fear of being exploited or deported. That's how basic economics work. Now, you may not like that. You may not like the fact that, well, higher wages means you may have to pay more for services and goods and products. I get it. That's true. But that's why we have laws, people. You've been benefiting from lower prices for certain services and products because there have been individuals being exploited right now by circumventing the law. Charlie Kirk pointed this out and actually expand on this idea a little bit. Million illegals have already self-deported under President Trump thanks to the unapologetic shock and awe campaign of raids and border enforcement. When Dwight Eisenhower launched his deportation roundup in 1954, nearly 10 foreigners left voluntarily for each one arrested. The same pattern is holding today. Remember, mass deportations include arrests and self-removals. The plan is working. So for all the people who have been bodily and physically arrested, apprehended, and deported, you've got 1 million people now so far who have just left on their own. And that's the plan. That's the idea. Ultimately, if you enforce the laws, people are not stupid. And if they have the choice of leaving voluntarily and maybe coming back legally one day versus being deported and seen as a federal criminal and never allowed to re-enter the country legally, well, what are you going to do? Obviously. All right, one more observation coming from the military and the Pentagon. In response to President Trump's statement, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth mobilized 700 military personnel to support ICE in Florida, Louisiana, and Texas. Quote from Secretary Hegseth, this is from Sean Parnell, spokesperson for the Pentagon. These service members drawn from all components and operating in a Title X duty status will provide logistical support and conduct administrative and clerical functions associated with the processing of illegal aliens at ICE detention facilities. They will not directly participate in law enforcement activities, obviously. And by the way, this is also not only what President Trump promised when he was running for office, but dirty little secret, this is exactly what Joe Biden did when he was letting all these people in the country. Remember when we had chaos at the borders and people were flooding in and it was just mass hysteria and just humanity piled up on top of each other? He deployed military personnel, not to enforce any of our immigration or border security laws, but to help with logistics so that everybody could get processed. Oh, we got to get you up to Chicago as fast as possible. Let's get more bodies down here. We got to rubber stamp all of these, all of these documents to make sure people can get in. Here's your cell phone. Here, use the app. Here's some free money. Here's some free health care. Here's some free food stamps. Get whatever you want. You got to, takes a lot of people to be able to hand out all those goodies at the border. Biden did this on the opposite side of the equation. And now Trump is utilizing military to help the deportation process. In maintaining the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and security of the United States, the Department of Defense works alongside with the Department of Homeland Security, the lead federal agency in this critical effort. This support provides critical resources to support ICE's mission, freeing up law enforcement personnel to focus on law enforcement tasks and missions. The department remains committed to securing 100% operational control of the border, which we have pretty much right now. Border crossings are down by 95%. Inflation is down. Wages are up. The Dow is up. Tariffs are fine and actually bringing money into the Treasury. And a tax cut is on the horizon. Everything is working. Everyone needs to chill out. Things are actually really good right now. And the president is making good on one of the most fundamental promises of his campaign, which is to fix the mess that we have inherited, that he has inherited from the last 4 years. And that begins with this deportation process and all of the hysteria and all of the violence and all of the criminal activity and all of the marching and all of the protests and all of the smashing windows and the threats of violence against law enforcement officials. much of that perpetrated by actual Democrats who hold elected office. None of that is making a difference. If anything, it is tightening Trump's resolve. This is going to get done come hell or high water, and we are all going to benefit for it. Thank you so much for watching. That was a lot. That was a lot of talking. Kevin, you had a lot of things for me to read today.
Did you expect to have a podcast and not talk?
Well, okay, that's a fair point. But a lot of my podcast is listening to and interacting with videos of other people talking.
I think the people come to hear you.
I do have one of those voices. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for giving the people what they want, the mellifluous tones of one Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Let's get to your super chats, shall we? I've got several from Rumble, so I want to get to those first because I always save the Rumble super chats for later. We've got, oh, you're right, Kevin, the Crime Prevention Research Center. That's who John Lott works for. That's where he does all of his work. $5 from Arthur Brogdon. Larry, as great as you are at politics, and I appreciate that. I don't know if I'm great at politics. I'm just a regular schmo who likes to observe stuff in this town. You obviously have a rich history of theater and Hollywood lore. That is true. Please consider doing an occasional deliberate segment. Blossom, Larry. Blossom. You got to put that through my executive producer's gateway. Would you let me do a musical theater segment, Kevin?
Can you hit the cricket sound button, please?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, hang on. Where? That's not it. There it is. Yeah, we're not going to be doing a musical theater segment. Although I did see that the chick Rachel Ziegler, Snow White, she's playing Evita in a London production of Evita, one of my favorite shows, actually. I can't believe anybody wanted to go see her do that part, but what can you do? Another $5. Thank you for the super chat, Arthur. Another $5 from Arthur Brogdon. Culture, Larry. Remember Andrew? Carrie has been. I know. I do a lot of theater stuff on my radio show. You know what? I get 4 hours every morning in DC, and we do talk about entertainment and theater and culture and stuff like that. So check that show out. Carrie, you can do it. Fuck Tucker. Oh, no, hold on. I'm not saying F Tucker, but Arthur Brogdon did. And for $5, he's allowed to say that. $2 super chat for Arthur Brogdon. You will, of course, need an ascot. Oh, yeah. Oh, no. If I'm going to do a culture podcast, I am definitely going to dress the part, and ascot will be provided. Absolutely. All right. Thank you for those super chats. Is that all we got today?
Yes, sir.
Hot damn. Hey, everybody. Thanks for liking the video. Thanks for subscribing, and thanks for sharing the links. If you liked any of the segments today, all three of them will be distributed on this very platform that you're on right now. And hi to all of our new friends on Rumble. Our numbers are growing on Rumble. And if you want to help the show, go over to the audio platforms, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify, subscribe and leave us a review. We really much appreciate that. That makes a big difference for us. All right, that's it. Thanks for watching today. We'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor, and you can call me Larry.